So today, we're going to basically start building our reusable valuation model for the class using Nike as our common company. So in Elms, in Files, there's a folder called Nike, and there's a file called, what's it called? Valuation Model Nike Start. You need to download that file, have it open in Excel, ready to go. So what we're going to do is this class and the next class, we're going to build out, and you're going to follow along with me. We're not going to start completely from scratch, but with this file together, we're going to build out a valuation model for Nike, which is tied to Bloomberg. And for homework, which one it will be, 7, due next week, you're going to basically turn in what we do in the class the next 2 days. And it's got to match exactly. So if you turn in and it matches exactly the file we create in class, then you've completed homework 7. Okay? And so there is no other homework this week other than the homework 6, which we'll talk about in a minute, but neither one of them require write-ups. So if you follow along and do everything in class today and Wednesday, then there's no more homework. You're done. Otherwise, you just have to get what we do in class done by next Monday. Okay? And this is being recorded for YouTube in case you need to go back and check anything, because we're going to go through some of these things relatively quickly. Okay? And you can also validate what you need to do. So while you're getting that open, a couple other things I do want to mention. So Wednesday is also the end of the first half of the Bloomberg trading simulation. So in case you want to see how you're doing, go to Bloomberg, idea. I believe this is section 201 that we're in right now. So what I'm going to do is at the end of class on Wednesday, I'm basically going to go here. I'm going to go to portfolio value. I'm going to sort it from highest to lowest. I'm going to make sure that everybody did at least 10 longs. So if you don't have 10 longs, you'll be disqualified. So make sure you have at least 10 longs by Wednesday. By the way, in the second half of the semester, you'll have to do 10 more longs. So even though this team has done 31 of them, they incrementally need 10 more second half of the semester. Okay, but regardless, I'm going to basically score you. And if I did this section, we now see that one of the teams, I don't count. I'd automatically be disqualified because I didn't do enough trading anyways. Too much cash. But basically this one team, Eiler, congratulations. You guys are currently in first place. So if the sim were to end right now, being in first place, you would have 5 points. Then Mao and Glazer would have 4. Then Fredericks 3, Taub 1, Zhang, Taub 2, Zhang 1. So 5, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's the way the grading would go. But you can see it's pretty tight. I mean, pretty much $10,000 separates the top four companies. So in the next couple of days, we could actually see some movement here amongst the top. So it is pretty tight. But nonetheless, that's how the rankings are going to work. Okay, so you don't have to do anything. Basically, at the end of classes end of trading day on Monday, I'm going to take a screenshot. I'm going to post it. And then based on how we do about circa 5 p.m. on Wednesday will basically be your final rankings. So close of trading basically on Wednesday is what you're shooting for. All right. Now the portfolios don't reset. So over the second half of the semester, you will continue trading. Okay. So any questions? Continue trading with the same portfolio, same teams. Questions? Okay. All right. Midterm solutions will be posted. Not going to go over that today. Interest of time, focusing on the valuation model. So let's talk about the valuation model. Excel here. All right. All right, here's the start. And I'm going to save this. Call this video. Okay. So this model, the tabs work from left to right. So I'll start out and describe the tab on the left. So the context is we want to build a reusable model that's going to take us 2 weeks to value Nike And then we do company number 2, it'll take you 10 minutes. Okay? And 3, 4, 5, etc. So the model's also tied to Bloomberg. So Bloomberg is going to be our source of data. And so that's how we're going to build the reusable model. So in order to use the data, we're going to need to get data in a standardized way. And Bloomberg has standardized financial statements, income statements, and balance sheets for companies. Unfortunately, what we have found in practice is their standardized statements aren't actually standardized. And when you go from company to company, all the data is different. And even though it shouldn't be, but that's the real world. And it's caused problems for us. And the reason I know that is because our statements don't balance, because they tend to miss things. So over time, what we've had to do is, rather than getting the standardized statements in Bloomberg, which vary, I needed what went into the standardized statements, kind of like all the raw ingredients, and that's what's on this tab. But what's fun is Bloomberg doesn't publicize this. So they don't tell you what goes into their standardized statements. We had to kind of methodically try and figure it out ourselves, reverse engineer it. And ironically, Bloomberg people actually asked me to send this back to them, which is funny, considering they will give us the statements in the first place. But neither here nor there. So this is the raw components that go into the standardized statements. But I will tell you, every now and then, just for fun, we stumble across something we haven't found before, or they add something new, and we'll eventually have to add that to this list. Okay? And the way you'll notice that is your CFI won't balance, right? Or your TII or TFI won't balance. It's because we're missing something, and then we have to play detective to figure out what was added for the company that we're searching for. The good news is for Nike, it's not going to be a problem. And for 95% of the companies you're going to work on this semester, it's not going to be a problem. So it's an exception, not the rule, but I just wanted to let you know this. So here's the deal. So I got this list of 81 fields that create the income statements and balance sheets. So then from this, there's a tab called Income tab, which is a standardized income statement based on those fields, and a balance sheet tab, which is a standardized balance sheet based on those fields for 6 years of historical Nike data. Then, and you would have appreciated this last week, if you go to the tab called TFI, here is the correctly mapped and balancing TFI for the last 6 years. TII, correct and matching TII for the last 6 years to those statements. CFI, correct and balancing and match CFI for those statements. EPBOY, EPEOY, those match as well. So again, rather than you going into the model and remapping to the real world statements, I've done that for you. Okay. So again, final tab is the ROIC drivers. So this is the ROIC tree that we've been analyzing this semester, auto-created in this spreadsheet based on the historical data that we've created. So that's the model as we get started. Okay? And this is the model that we are going to reuse. Right? And what's key to this reusable model that makes it Nike becomes Adidas, becomes Under Armour, becomes whoever, is this tab, the model data tab. Because this is what we're going to replace every time we change companies. Right? So here is homework 6, due Wednesday, 10 a.m. for all sections. You got to recreate this tab. Okay? And you got to recreate it in Bloomberg. And what matters is column B. Because there's column A and there's column B. Column A are what I'll call the friendly names. Column B are the actual names of the database fields. And what Bloomberg will do is they will change the column A names company by company. But they don't change the column B fields. So for example, I might look up Nike, it says revenue. I look up Tesco, it says turnover. Okay, term they use in the UK. They're both pointing to the database field, sales underscore rev underscore turn. That's the field that matters. So when we put together our model, we got to make sure that we get that field. Okay, and in order for this model to work, when you put the new data in, it's got to be these fields in this order exactly for this these amount of columns. Anything that doesn't fit in here will break the model and will not cause it to work. So your homework is going to be very specific for homework 6, which is you have to recreate this file exactly and map it exactly for the company that I'm going to give you, which is called PVH. And if you don't match it exactly, you get a 0. And if you match it exactly, you get a 2. It's very binary. And the reason we're going to be very ticky-tack on this is because you're going to use this model again and again and again the rest of the semester. And if you don't get it right, then all of your models will be flawed. You won't be able to do any more assignments. So you got to get this one right. It's something that should take you 15 or 20 minutes, but nonetheless, We got to get this one right. So how do we get this template reused? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to Bloomberg. You're going to go to, I'll start out with Nike, even though your homework assignment's on PVH, but I'll start out with Nike. Then you'll go to FA for historical statements. And then you'll go to custom. So this is where you do custom historical statements. Now our model needs 6 years worth of data, and Bloomberg defaults to 10. Periods needs to say 6. So go to settings. Make sure you change the following settings. Where it says number of periods, change from 10 to 6. Okay? Otherwise, you just manually say 6 periods every time because our model's built for 6 years. Okay? Next, on data, second tab over, uncheck these 4 boxes because we don't want to have any miscellaneous crap being exported by Bloomberg because we just want those 6 columns worth of data. Anything else will break our model. Next, go to display. Make sure it says ascending because we want to have the most current year on the right. Okay, so we go from left to right, oldest to newest. And finally, under Report Excel tab, make sure Excel export as value, not formula. All right. One of the coolest features of Bloomberg would be if you had your own personal terminal that you carried with you, then when you export the formulas for Nike and you put it into your Excel model, all you would have to do is change the ticker in your Excel model, and just like that, all the data is updated for the new company. It's super cool, but it involves having the terminal with you wherever you go. If you export formulas and leave this lab and you don't have a Bloomberg terminal, think submit a homework assignment, when the TAs open your file, gibberish. There'll be zeros. And you'll get a 0 on your assignment for not submitting anything. So very important, if you're going to be using data outside the lab, make sure it says value, not formulas, right? That's why it will take 10 minutes to do the second company, not 1 minute to do the second company, because you're going to have to do the following process, which is export the value data, copy and paste it in the model, done, work on next company. That's the extra step we got to do, but I'm still telling you, this is a lot faster than any other class you will ever take in terms of creating a valuation model. So, cancel or update.
For your content, do we have to uncheck any of those like segmentation data or referencing?
Yes, you don't want any of those. Just the 6 columns. And again, 6 columns is arbitrary. All right. Our model is just going to have 6 historical years. And that's just an arbitrary amount that I have chosen. Okay. We could have done more or less. I've just chosen 6. I want you to have 6 historical years. Now, you'll create a custom template. And so I want to match, and this is what's very important, this model data tab, which I've broken out and saved as a separate file as part of your homework assignment. It's basically the same tab. I want these items in the correct order following the rows over and over again. So here's the easiest way to do it. In our model data tab, go to cell B6, take the sales rev return, copy that, go to Bloomberg, where it says enter field, paste it, and it's the first one. And hit enter. All right? I'm going to do this again. Cost of revenue. Select, copy, paste, select, enter. Here's why this matters. If you type in cost of revenue, which one is it? See, if you use the friendly name, there's a lot of things that are very similar to the actual name that you're looking for, and you're not sure which one that we're using. And the one that we're using is the one that's on their supposedly standardized statements. Okay? So here's the thing. In order to have our model work, we all have to be using the same fields, and we have to use the right fields. So therefore, using the friendly name to type it in could cause you problems. That may not. You may be able to figure it out, but I'm telling you, which one of those is IS underscore COGS underscore 2 underscore FE and PP and G. You're not going to figure that out for that list. So copy paste. And by the way, if you want to check it, hover over it, and once you select it, it'll tell you what the field is if you want to do a check, if you're not sure. Right? Now, you don't want to have it in there twice. This would be a mistake. So let me delete. So you're going to go through this process. I'm not going to do it all right here, but you get the sense of this. Just do this 79 more times and get it right for those years. All right, take you 15 minutes. When you're done, save this. Call it a template. I've called mine model. You can call yours whatever you want. All right, but here's the point. Once you save your template, so let me show you my finished template, which is called model. You have a template that looks like this. Okay. The final step is you hit export to Excel, and you export that current template to Excel, and that is your data for, in this case, your homework assignments can be on PVH, but it's for Nike. Okay. And if I want to do PVH, again, I go back, I switch this to PVH, and now hit enter. Now I got PVH's data, export, Excel, current template, and this is actually the one that you're going to submit, which is the PVH data. Yes?
So that's all homework 6 is just that Excel file you submitted.
With one more thing, and that's it. So we're almost done with homework 6. All right? So here's the final thing. Excel is going to choke on these dashes. You cannot, in Excel, refer to a field that has a dash in it because it'll just error out in a formula. So we can't have dashes. So what we have to do is we have to replace these dashes with zeros. But here's the thing. Don't replace negatives with zeros, which will screw up your entire model. Replace dashes, which are long negatives, so like hyphens. So here's the point. Copy it. Control F is find. Paste the long dash, not the short dash, because you replace minuses, you're going to get really weird results. Hit replace, replace with zeros, replace all. And you replace 41 dashes with zeros. Then save, upload, you're done with homework 6. That's all you got to do. Okay, questions about homework 6? All right, that's due Wednesday. Okay. And again, you'll be using this model next week. Now, I've already done this step for you, but what we would then do is we would take the Nike data, we would select everything we just exported with the dashes removed, we'd copy it, we'd go to our valuation model, we'd go to the model data tab, right click, paste special, values, and we basically overwrite what's there. Okay. Now, I'm not going to do that because I've already done that step for you in the model that we're using this morning. But nonetheless, we're going to do this next week because once we finish the valuation model on Nike, your next assignment is going to be do a valuation on PVH. And in order to do that, you're going to have to take what's been exported and then overwrite and submit as part of that next assignment. Right? So let's go back to the Nike model. All right, so we're in our Nike valuation, and the final two tabs are ratios and assumptions. So our goal is to do a valuation, which means we have to forecast the future cash flows in an economic format. And so we're going to arbitrarily forecast 6 years. So we have 6 historical years, and we're going to have 6 forecast years. And I say arbitrarily because that's not always the right answer for how long you want to forecast. But what is the right answer is you have to forecast n plus 1 years. Okay? What that means is your n plus 1 year is the beginning of your perpetuity or continuing value period. So by forecasting 6 years, we forecast 5 years, and year 6 is the beginning of continuing value. If I wanted to forecast 10 years, then I'd actually forecast 11 years because years 1 through 10 would be year by year forecast. Year 11 would be the beginning of the continuing value period. All right? So I'm just arbitrarily building a model for 5 plus 1. 5 defined years plus 6 year is continuing value. So that's why we're going to do 6 years. Okay? So our goal is to do that. So another trick of the trade that I'm going to share with you is when you do create these forecasts, you want to forecast ratios, not numbers directly. It's a better practice. Okay? So that's what this ratio tab is. Everything on this tab is a percentage of sales with the exception of the revenue growth rate, which is change in revenue. Okay? And so the way we're going to forecast Nike's and any other company's revenue is we're not going to forecast their revenue, we're going to forecast their revenue growth rate. And then we're not going to forecast their EBITDA, we're going to forecast their EBITDA as a percentage of revenue. So by forecasting it that way, it will give us the numbers in the actual income statements and balance sheets. Okay? The other practice that will be very helpful for you is you want to minimize the areas in your model that you'll actually forecast and change, right? Because if you start putting in assumptions throughout your model in all the tabs, I guarantee you when you reuse the model, you'll forget about one of them at some point. And weird things will happen to your Excel file and you won't be able to figure out why. And it's because you have some hard-coded number somewhere in the file that you're reusing that you forgot to change, okay? And so as a better practice, you want to minimize the places where you enter data. So in this model, we're going to enter data in two tabs. Number one is ratios that we will change, and number two is assumptions. Ratios are year-by-year assumptions. Assumptions are universal assumptions. That's the way I'm separating out the two, but those are the two tabs that we will change. The other thing is because I don't want to break my model, because we can't basically lock the model until we finish building it. I want to make sure I don't overwrite a formula by accident. So things that I can change, yellow. Okay? I arbitrarily pick the color yellow. You can pick whatever color you want. I happen to choose yellow, but that's basically telling me if the cell is yellow, I can change it. If it's not yellow, I don't want to muck around with it. So for example, the WACC could change. So Nike's WACC may not be 7.8%. We can change the WACC, okay? But I don't want to change the formulas that are based on WACC because that could break my model. So yellow versus not yellow, things that we can change, right? So let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to start by taking the income tab. And just because there's a lot of data on my screen, I'm going to hide these columns. You don't need to do this. This is just so you can see what I'm about to do in the forecast years. If you did hide, don't delete the columns because that will destroy your model. Okay? But I'm just hiding it just so you can see what I'm doing over to the right because my screen's not that big on this projector. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create a forecast. So I'm going to separate out the two so I know that this is a forecast. And equals previous year. So H2 is G2 plus 1. I need relative references for years. Okay? Because whatever year I get, I'm forecasting the next year. It's not always going to be 2019. In fact, very shortly for Nike, it's going to be 2020. Okay? So again, I want a relative year. Okay? So the first item we're going to forecast is revenue. So here's how we're going to do it. Equals, we're going to go to the ratios. And same thing, I'm going to hide some columns just so you can see what I'm doing. This is my forecast for ratios as well. Equals previous year plus 1. And for revenue growth rate equals the previous year. So H2 or H3 equals G3. And I'm going to make this cell yellow. All right. So here's the thing. Income tab for 2019 revenue equals 2018 revenue, G3, times left paren, 1 plus ratios, H3, right paren, 38,565.99. If they grow about 6%, and remember there's decimal places there, so it's not exactly 6, it's close to 6, but they grow about 6%, it's going to turn their revenue into 38,565.99 billion. Okay? Now I don't want you to do this, but I'm going to show you what we're going to eventually do. What if Nike grows 2%? 37,124. What if Nike grows 3.4%? 37,634.5. This is what I mean. Use the ratios, create the forecast. Right? So here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to do what I just did yet, as placeholders equal previous year, just so we all have the same data. Okay, because that's how you're going to be graded. You need to make sure you got the right model. We all have to have the same solution. We'll eventually change these assumptions. All right, the next line item we're going to forecast is EBITDA, equals the previous year. And we're going to make that yellow. Now, this is a shortcut that we're going to take. It is window dressing to forecast cost of goods sold, cost of revenue, and operating expenses, because those two give us our EBITDA, and the model doesn't care, okay? But for valuation, EBITDA is going to be the critical driving metric we're going to look at. So rather than adding two components that lead to EBITDA, we're just going to directly forecast EBITDA. Okay, so that's something I'm going to save you a little time on. Next, we're going to take depreciation amortization equal the previous year, and we're going to forecast depreciation. And so again, we're going to make that yellow. But we're then going to solve for operating income, which equals EBITDA minus the DA. So H7 minus H8 equals H9. That's not yellow, because operating income is based on the two numbers above it. Now, I made a choice in this class. EBITDA minus depreciation equals operating income. We could have forecasted operating income and depreciation and solved for EBITDA. We could have forecasted EBITDA and operating income and solved for depreciation. I chose to forecast EBITDA and depreciation to solve for operating income, because eventually those three are related to each other, so we don't want to forecast all three independently. Two create the third. So that's what we've done here. That's why the first two are in yellow. The third is a formula. Questions? Okay, tax rate. Normally I would say equal the previous year, but it's not going to be 55% unless Warren or Bernie Sanders are elected. So basically right now, 21% was the tax rate that was changed recently for corporations. So as a placeholder, I'm just going to put in 21%. So not equal the previous year. And again, yellow. That's something we'll change. No plat. You can see the formula I'm about to do in cell G11, but basically it's our operating income times left paren 1 minus that tax rate gives us no plat of 9% or copy paste, I'll be lazy, 9.6% approximately. And non-operating gains and losses equals previous year, but that is something we could change, so I'll make that yellow. So those are the key numbers we're going to forecast off of the income statement. All right? So now I'm going to take these cells, this column, copy it, go to column M, and paste. So we now have a forecast going through 2024 of these numbers. And so again, as we get started, everything is just equaling the previous year. Eventually, we'll change it to more realistic numbers for Nike. Okay. Now, we want to take these ratios and finish off this income statement using those ratios. So we'll go down to EBITDA. Here's how we'll do this. So for cell H8 off the income tab equals ratios H7, which is EBITDA as a percentage of sales, times from the income tab H3, which is 2019 revenue forecast, 550140. That's the number that you should have. All right, same process for depreciation. Equals from the ratios tab, 2019 depreciation as a percentage of sales, so H8 times income 2019 revenue, 791.52. Solve for operating income. You can see the order of operations over here in column A. So you have two choices. You can either take EBITDA minus the depreciation, or you can take G10 and copy it and paste it to H10 because that's the same formula. 4709.89. Now, if you do copy and paste, which we'll be doing a lot of, I will warn you, Do not drag and drop in this class. I'm shouting it to you. Bold exclamation point. All caps. Do not drag and drop. Right? It will destroy your grade. Right? Because what Microsoft does, and what I mean by drag and drop, is you basically take the little anchor here and you move it over a cell. That's called dragging and dropping. Never in this class do that. Here's why. What Microsoft will do if you drag and drop, every now and then, so this is a 1 in 20 chance, but every now and then, it'll say, aha, I think you're actually trying to create a series. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn everything that you just dragged to in a series. And I'm going to change the numbers to be a series. But I'm not going to alert you that I did that. And if you're not going back and paying attention, then suddenly Microsoft has changed your formula without you asking. And it didn't warn you it was doing that. And that will screw you up. Because what will happen is your CFIs won't balance. And they won't balance, not because you had wrong data, because Microsoft created a series that you didn't know that they did, and it would just increment the series. And then basically you're searching around the model, pulling your hair out saying, why doesn't my model balance? And when you turn in that unbalanced model, you're going to get zeros in this class. So I'm just telling you from experience, not only for this class, but in the real world, sometimes Microsoft's help you don't want, right? And when they help you, it'd be nice if they told you they were helping you, because it gets dangerous in this type of a job. So don't drag and drop. Copy, paste. Okay? All right. But if you want to drag and drop, go ahead. I'm just giving you advice. You don't have to listen to me. Interest expense. This is an enterprise DCF model. What the book says is that under Midigliani-Miller, for enterprise DCF, we assume a constant capital structure. That's why WACs don't change. That's why we use one WAC, not a year-by-year WAC. We assume a target capital structure that's constant. Right? So for our purpose, we're going to assume the current capital structure is the target capital structure. And so therefore, we're going to leave the WAC alone, which also means we're going to leave the cap structure alone. So whatever debt they have, we're going to leave. It's not going to affect the valuation. But for window dressing, whatever interest they pay, they're going to keep paying. Okay? It will not affect your valuation. But it does complete the income statement. So therefore, equal the previous year. Whatever interest they're paying, they keep paying because we're not going to change the debt. Same thing for interest income. Whatever interest income they're earning on excess cash, we're going to leave alone. We're not going to change that as well. Again, it will not affect the valuation, but we're just going to do it as a placeholder. Equal previous year. FX gains or losses, 0. I don't know what the exchange rate is going to be in 2022. How do I forecast that? I can't. So 0. We're not going to forecast gains or losses that we don't know. Let's assume Nike knows how to hedge. Okay? So FX gains and losses, 0. Now, if you believe that you actually can forecast one of these things that I have as a 0, have at it. But I'm also telling you they won't affect the valuation at all. Okay? Next, income loss from affiliates equal the previous year. Whatever gains or losses they're getting from their affiliates, let's assume it's going to continue. For Nike, it's 0, but it's placeholder, so equal the previous year for another company. And then finally, non-operating gains or losses equals, from the ratios tab, H12 times, from the income tab, H3, 2019 forecast revenue, so 69.93. So for pre-tax income, again, it's operating income minus interest expense plus interest income minus FX minus income loss for affiliates minus non-operating gains and losses, or take cell G16, copy it, paste it into cell H16. 4586 pre-tax income. On this income, Nike would then have to pay tax. The income tax expense equals the pre-tax income of 816 times the ratios, 2019 tax rate, which right now we have at 21%, so H10. So that would be 963.05 in tax. Income before extraordinary items equals the pre-tax income minus the taxes, 3622.90. Extraordinary loss, 0. By definition, an extraordinary loss should never happen again. That's the whole point of being extraordinary. Okay, so we shouldn't have extraordinary losses in the future. So 0. If they keep recurring, then they're not extraordinary. They should be in cost of goods sold or SG&A. Net income before minority interest equals the extraordinary profit minus the extraordinary items, 3622.90. Payments to the minority shareholders equals previous year. Whatever payments they're making to the minority shareholders, they're going to keep making to those minority shareholders. We're not going to change those minority share payments because, we're keeping a constant capital structure. Which means net income equals H20 minus H21, or if you want to be lazy, take G22, copy it to H22, paste. Cash preferred dividends equals previous year. Just like interest expense, we're not changing around the equity. Therefore, whatever dividends they're paying, they're going to keep paying. Preferred and common. Equal the previous year. Other adjustments to equity, 0. These are the adjustments occurred by when the accounting standards boards, FASB or IFRS, decides to change the accounting rules. So when the accounting rules change, they make the changes down here. This is after tax and generally not impacting cash, so we're not going to worry about it. So 0. And again, I don't know what they're going to be, the proclamations in the future, so we can't forecast them. 0. Net income to common shareholders, just take cell G25, copy it, paste it into H25. Dividends, common dividends equal previous year. Whatever Nike's paying in dividends, they're going to keep paying. We're going to handle potential changes in dividends in a different way. I'll explain later. But here's the point. That dividend number is negative 1243. So this is a very important data source issue that comes up in the real world. Bloomberg gives you expenses as positive numbers. Bloomberg gives dividends as negative numbers. So if we're following along, we've been subtracting the expenses all along the way. If we subtract the dividends, then we're going to have a double negative, and it will effectively add the dividends, not subtract the dividends. So that's just something we learn about the tool of the data source we're using. So even though the formula is net income minus dividends is change in retained earnings, it's going to be equals net income plus the negative dividend equals change in retained earnings, which you can also see from cell G27. By the way, that is why I had you change G25 to be H25, because the same thing is true for cash preferred dividends. Preferred dividends comes as a negative number, okay, in Bloomberg. I don't know why they have expenses as positive numbers and dividends as negative numbers, but they do. And so that's just something we have to be careful for when we create the statements. It's also important because if you use a different data source, CapIQ, Thomson Reuters, whatever they have these days, Mergent, or FactSet, to basically give you data, and if they send data under different signs, under different names, it's not going to work with this model. So this model is very specifically tied to Bloomberg. And if Bloomberg ever changes something, it not just break us, break a lot of people. That's actually why they're very specific about their field names, right? Because people have had these fields for 20 years. And the worst thing is for Goldman Sachs to have their data feeds screwed up because Bloomberg changes a field name. So they don't change those, okay? And they don't change the signs. But unfortunately, we just have to pay attention to the data that we get no matter what we do for a modeling purpose. That's an example of this. All right, so last step here. Assuming you got 2379.90, select column H, copy it, go to column M, paste it. You now have 6 years of forecasted income statements going through 2024. 361027 should be your final number. Once you've done that, go to TII. Just make it a little bit smaller so it's easier to see. Take column G, copy column G, go to column M, paste. Change. You got to flip the word history here, though. This is now a forecast. Spell correctly. Forecast. Copy, paste. But very quickly, we now have 6 years of forecasted balancing TIIs. This is your balance check. Okay? So we've now finished forecasting the income statement for Nike for the first 6 years, assuming those ratios repeat. Questions so far? All right, let's move on to the balance sheet. Similar process. So back to the ratios. We're going back to the balance sheet. And these ratios for the balance sheet are all a percentage of sales. So again, as a placeholder for 2019 equals the previous year. Make it yellow. Copy this and paste this all the way down. Through cell M24. So everything is just repeating itself from the previous year. Okay? And so again, for grading purposes, the TAs are going to look to see very specifically, do you match these columns and match these rows? So for this assignment, it's very important that you match these columns and rows that I put in here, right? And if they don't match, if they're off, then it will cause you problems, right? And by problems, meaning you get zeros on assignments, right? And by the way, this model is different than the one we did last year. So don't use last year's model to submit. That'll look comically bad for you, right? Because I change it year by year intentionally so that when people, I want to see them look comically bad when they go to the last class and they just resubmit that model, okay? Because it seems easy, but that's hard to explain to the Honor Council. All right, so anyways, back to this. Ratios. Next, balance sheet. Same idea. Just as we did for the income statement, we're going to create a forecast for the balance sheet equals previous year plus 1. Okay. All right. So now, and again, I'll hide some of these intervening years just so you can see what I'm about to do. All right. So we're going to start with these as a percentage of sales. Now, again, better practice, according to McKinsey and others, you want to have the balance sheet ratio be appropriate to the income statement driver. Translation, you want accounts and notes receivable to be driven as a percentage of sales, but you want inventory to be percentage of cost of goods sold. Okay, that's ideal. We're not going to do ideal. We're going to do less than ideal, but better for us. Everything on this list is a percentage of sales. Number one, it makes it easier. And the second reason will be apparent later, but you'll appreciate the second reason later. So, here's how this works. We'll start out with accounts and notes receivable for 2019, which is H6 equals ratios H14, which is accounts and notes receivable as a percentage of sales for 2019, times income H3. 3706.45. Right. Otherwise, notice I misspelled the word forecast. Hate this keyboard. All right, let's go back. Ratios. Unbilled revenue is next. So in the balance sheet, unbilled revenue equals for H7 of the balance sheet. Ratios tab H15. Unbilled revenue is percentage of sales times income 2019 sales, which is H3. Inventory equals ratios H3, H16 times income H3, 55, 74, 52. Other current assets equals ratios 2019 other current assets as a percentage of sales. It's 817 times income H23, which is H3, 2019 revenue, 1197.34. Long-term investments equals ratios H18 times income H3. Net fixed assets equals ratios H19 times income, again, 2019 is H3. Long-term assets equals H20 times income H3. Accounts payable, I think, is the next one. It's percentage of sales. H21 off ratios times income. 2019 revenues H3. Other short-term liabilities equals H22 times income H3. Other long-term liabilities, let's sell here, equals ratios H, sure, that's right. Other current liabilities, other long-term liabilities, yeah, equals 23 times 3407.65. All right, so those are the 10 or 11, however many ratios we just did for the balance sheet. So now what we need to do is we need to finish the balance sheet by balancing the balance sheet without a circular reference. All right, a circular reference is an invalid model. You should never trust a model with a circular reference. Right? Because what it means is Excel is using two numbers to solve for the other, and you just keep iterating, and every time you iterate, it keeps redoing the calculation, giving you new numbers every time. That's not a valid model. So in our class, if you turn a model with a circular reference, we're not even going to grade it. You can't have a circular reference. So I'm going to show you how to build a forecasted model without one. Okay, and that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to finish off the liabilities and equity side of the balance sheet first. So let's start out with equity. Total preferred equity for 2019 equals the previous year. Again, since we're not changing the cap structure, we're leaving the debt and equity alone. Whatever preferred they have, they keep. Same thing with minority interest on the balance sheet. Any investment by the minority shareholders will not change. Equal the previous year. We're also going to not issue shares or repurchase shares. So share capital and additional paid-in capital equals the previous year. Finally, retained earnings equals retained earnings from the last year, so G31, plus from the income tab, 2019 change in retained earnings, which is H27. So if the retained earnings go up by H27 on the income tab, they would end up at 5804.90. Okay? So if I sum those four accounts up, I get my total equity, 12,191.90. Now I'm going to finish off the liabilities. Short-term borrowings equal the previous year. Again, we're not mucking around with the debt. Therefore, current liabilities is the sum of the three above. Long-term borrowings, not changing the capital structure, leave the long-term debt alone, equal the previous year. Pension liabilities, equal the previous year. A company's not supposed to add new unfunded pension liabilities, so we're not going to. And if they have any pension liabilities, they remain to be paid off. Now it's zero for Nike, but nonetheless equaling the previous year. Long-term liabilities equals the sum of the three above. Long-term borrowings, other long-term liabilities, and pension liabilities. And total liabilities is the sum of current plus long-term. And finally, total liabilities and equity are total liabilities plus total equity, 25,447.11. Now, this next step is very important. We need to get the assets to exactly equal the liabilities and equity. Otherwise, we have a flawed balance sheet. So I'm going to show you the trick on how to do that. What you do is in cell H16 equals cell H33. Okay, works, balances, works every time. Okay, so we're going to force the balance sheet to balance. Now, in order for the assets to add up, it creates the concept of what's known as a plug. We're going to have to plug something when we add up the assets to make sure that all the assets add up to that amount. The plug is excess cash. So excess cash is what the model is going to solve for that basically makes the balance sheets balance year to year. So let's go back to our assets. I'm going to solve for excess cash, which means I need an operating cash. So here's operating cash for 2019. Equals, which is cell H4. From the Assumptions tab, operating cash is a percentage of revenue. That's B3. The reason it's on the Assumptions tab is the Ratios tab are year-by-year things that change. Operating cash shouldn't change. There's a minimum amount of cash you should always have. You're going to run out of cash. We're going to leave that universal. That's why it's on the Assumptions tab. Right? I'm setting it right now arbitrarily at 2% of revenue, which is about a week of cash. Right? Nobody can actually operate that low. It's probably going to be higher than that, but as a placeholder, 2% of revenue. So we're going to do, so we're going to take Assumptions B3, and we're going to multiply by income, H3, 771.32. Very important. We're going to copy this. And since there's only one number on the Assumptions tab, I need to put a $sign in front of my B and a $sign in front of my 3 to tell Excel that that means it's an absolute reference. All right, so if you don't put the $sign or string in front of the B3, $sign B, string B, $sign 3, string 3, when you start copying this across your model, it's going to change the references and it's going to break everything. So you need to make it an absolute reference. The other number we're going to forecast is Goodwill. Generally, we don't know if Nike's going to make an acquisition next year, and if they are, even how much they're going to pay for it, how much is going to be Goodwill. It's impossible to forecast. Therefore, we're not going to forecast it. We can't. So whatever Goodwill they have equals the previous year, because we don't think that we don't know what the acquisitions are going to be. And more importantly, Goodwill is not tax deductible. It's not amortized. It's only impaired. And if it's impaired, it doesn't affect cash flow. So changes in Goodwill that go down don't matter to us, and they'll go up if they do an acquisition, but we don't know what the acquisitions are going to be. So can't forecast them. Equal previous year. So the last account that's not a summary is excess cash. So H5 is the plug. So here's how we do this. Equals total assets, which is H16, minus everything else. Minus operating cash, which is H4. Minus accounts receivable, which is H6. Minus unbilled revenue, which is H7. Minus inventory, which is H8. Minus other current assets, which is H9. Minus long-term investments, which is H11. Minus net fixed assets, which is H12. Minus goodwill, and minus other long-term assets. Hit enter. 6380.54 of excess cash. Notice no circular reference. All right. For window dressing, we can finish up the balance sheet. Total current assets equals the sum of the 6 items above, from operating cash down to other current assets. Long-term assets equals the sum of the 4 items above: long-term investments, net fixed assets, goodwill, and other long-term assets. And if we just want to do a quick check, if we add our total current assets to our long-term assets, we should get 25,447.11. So this is what I mean by this plug allows our balance sheet to remain in balance, which is very important for the model. Right? Now, I just did this as a balance check. I'm going to take this out, but final step, take column H, copy it, go to column M, paste. You now have 6 years of forecasted balance sheets. Then, home stretch, go to your TFI. On your TFI, take column G, copy it, go to column M, paste. And then just change history to forecast. Then go to your CFI. We now can create, we did this right, 6 years of balancing CFIs. And the number you want, 1341. It's going to be one of the ways you're graded. So your model needs to have a final CFI of 1341, 2024. Right? Then we go to the economic profit tab. BOY, copy. Copy. Copy that to column M. Paste. Change the word to forecast. EOY, copy, paste, BP EOY, again, change history to forecast. And again, the number you want on the EPEOY, final one, 3901. That's it. That's what you need to do to complete the first part, what I'll call part 1 of the valuation model. If you were there today in class, you're done. If you're not here, you need to get here by start of class on Wednesday, because we're going to pick up at this exact point on Wednesday and then essentially start doing the valuation. So what we've done, yes?
So this is for homework 7, not 6.
This is half of homework 7. Okay? So in order to complete homework 7, what we've done today is we've taken Nike's historical financial statements, and what we've done is we forecasted 6 years of financial statements, off the ratios and assumptions, and created 6 years of economic statements and cash flows that come from those forecasts. Right? What we're going to do in our next class is we're then going to turn that into a valuation, which we're going to do what's called an as-is valuation, and we're going to value Nike as of their current stock price and match their price to this model and get an enterprise DCF that does that. What we're going to do for Monday, after you turn this in, is we're going to then do a bull and a bear, and we're going to do essentially the buy, sell, hold opinion on Nike and some scenarios, and that's going to basically complete the Nike model. And I'll give you a hint, next week, you're going to take what you do this Wednesday for PVH, you're going to replace it with everything we've done with Nike data, and you're going to give me a valuation for the following homework assignment on PVH yourselves. Okay, so the first one, the training wheels are on. We're going to complete Nike together. You have to match exactly Nike together, right? The next one, you're going to do yourself, not as a group project, as an individual assignment using the model that you have built. Okay, so in order to be able to prepare for that, today and Wednesday, you're going to turn in by next Monday, and then the following Monday, you'll turn in what we do in Monday's class, and then I'll turn you loose on the model itself. So that's kind of the upcoming way we go. Questions about anything so far? As I said, if you've completed this point, you're done. And I'll see everybody on Wednesday at the start of class. We'll pick up from here. Bring this file back with you, because this is halfway work in process to homework 7. And make sure you get the model data done for homework 6. Okay? See everybody next week or next class.